of Dusko, and the creator of the Dusko character set NFTs, which are based on the world around a dilapidated gas station where two twin brothers, Vincent and Carlo, provide gas, snacks, and sass, smack dab in the middle of nowhere special. Dakota, just to get over the formality of all this, can you tell us about yourself? Like, where do you live? Where did you grow up? Favorite food, least favorite food, TV or books?
Yeah, born and raised here in LA. Grew up mainly in Westwood. Third grade, watching a lot of SpongeBob, Simpsons. Didn't really eat food that had a lot of color at the time. A lot of white, sauceless pizza. Now I eat food with color and vegetables, and now I live in Glendale.
You make images with color too.
And I use color, yeah.
When did you start to draw?
Drawing was like one of my earliest childhood like memories. Like when I was like in preschool at the time, it was 90s basketball players that I was really into and drawing them. Middle school was like making up superheroes, making up fake BAMs. So it's always been a constant, like doodling during class, drawing weird faces or drawing my teachers or whatever on my notes during class.
Did you ever think that you'd turn these drawings into, I don't know, something more professional, something more disciplined?
No, not really. Like music has always been more of the long-term pursuit, and drawing has just been like this instinctual like need to do. Like if I'm just nervous or if there's a pen and paper in front of me, I'm gonna draw. But it was never like, oh, I'm gonna do this with it though. Dusko was like the first thing that like felt like, oh, here's a clear path and direction.
Interesting. Dusko was the first. So like regarding Dusko, I feel some kind of pressure to ask specifically about the characters and narratives of Dusko, but I'm somewhat reluctant to do so because I've been of the mind that narrative should be experienced and not explained. As the famous pianist Glenn Gould once said, I could tell you about the musical theory, but it doesn't really matter unless you feel it in your bones. This is why I want, if you are okay with it, to take a step back and discuss with you some of what I find to be the undercurrents of your work.
Totally.
Cool.
Absolutely.
So like my first question is kind of about page 1 of the Dusko comic. You write, a comic buck, a rest stop between the mundane and surreal, the interim for that deranged looking for a meal. So I guess the first question is what's a comic buck?
Well, that's just like purposefully misspelling comic book, just to set a tone for Dusko, because my goal was just to make the world in it very specific, and clearly something was off, like wanting it to pull from reality but be deeply rooted in some fictional universe of its own. So I was like, let's just spell words phonetically but not necessarily traditionally correct.
I realized like reading it out loud kind of clued me into it a little bit more than just reading it in my head.
But yeah, that's the constant theme with Dusko, and like the background, that I want it to be kind of ambiguous and you can't really put your finger on what exactly is off about it. Like I kind of keep the desert and where the gas station is nondescript on purpose, where it's like, is this in America? Is it in Mexico? Is it in the Middle East? Is it on Mars? Like keeping that kind of open-ended, kind of keeping the time period also kind of vague, or it's its own weird, amalgamation of multiple time periods. So I just wanted to be its own thing in that way.
Yeah, is that what they call the uncanny? Like something familiar and strange at the same time? I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
Well, yeah, I like thinking about the space between the mundane and the surreal, because over the past few years, the mundane has developed a kind of tautological relationship to the surreal, as in the mundane is the surreal and the surreal has become the mundane. Then I learned that you've been working on Dusko since like 2016, which is, I guess, shouldn't be a surprise. It was a year of dismantling and redefining our social experiences. But without getting into specifics, like, can you maybe talk about your relationship to how truth reveals itself in the experience of the surreal, or vice versa?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Dusko like came from me finding such mundane task on a day job, like at a coffee shop. Uh, with a repetition of such mundane activities just became so surreal to me. Like I felt like, am I in a video game? Like, or growing up watching something like SpongeBob where he's in like the Krusty Krab. Like I was like, I'm just doing the same thing, asking the same questions to everybody. I'm going to restock all these cups every day. I'm going to like make 200 drinks a day. Like it was just this crazy repetition. I was like, this is so weird. And so my brain obviously was bored and like not so stimulated. And then that's where the Dusko fantasy started to spiral out of like trying to imagine something more stimulating or interesting amidst the boredom.
Nice. I think I like felt that too. I've like never had a more productive creative year. I feel like, or in the past 4 years, have been just like incredibly productive. But also learned the difference between shock and surprise, which I feel
Oh
like I
yeah.
also kind of experience in Dusko. Um, a line you write on that same page, you say, "Those deranged looking for a meal." Again, I think about how you're like able to split and pull apart the idea of hunger. Like there is a hunger for food, which to me points to the ever widening wealth gap, and there's a hunger for ambition, which is on the other side of that split in meaning. Um, yeah, here again, you are able to redesignate meaning to two opposite points on a line, kind of pulling away from each other to such a degree that I forget what the middle looks like. So I guess what I'm asking you is like, what what is your relationship to hunger? And I guess
Well,
the space in between.
the constant drive for me really is like I'm always thinking about like the next song or the next thing I'm going to draw. And so like when I was at work and Dusko was first coming about, um like I was just like starving for getting off of work to go back to what I want to be doing. So it's like this obsession and compulsion. So that's what I'm constantly like hungry for. And if I'm not creating something, I'm gonna like go absorb someone else's record or movie or something to like fuel me. So I think that's what gets me off and gets me going.
Hmm.
Is constantly coming up with that next project to kind of consume myself with and
So it's
immerse
like
myself.
derangement is a kind of like period of consumption, deranged consumption.
Definitely. Well, yeah, like I find, I get maybe a little obsessive with my interests, so I can get a little too immersed within a cartoon I'm into at the time or maybe a discography. So it does get deranged. And then when you're working on something, you kind of have to have like no distractions and get absorbed and go a little crazy
Have you read
while
Thomas
making it.
Bernhard before?
No.
Oh, he's like one of my favorite like Austrian writers, and he like kind of writes his novels in like a single paragraph, like 300 pages, just one paragraph, and it
Oh,
really grips
wow.
you. But he like, I remember him saying once that it's like there are periods, long periods of just reading, and then there are long periods of just writing. It's like they don't overlap.
I think
Um,
that makes sense. Like, I think like a lot of people that are creative, like can get like they tap the well dry eventually. Like you need like a
mhm.
refresh and a breather. Like I always get afraid if I don't keep on playing guitar every single day or drawing every day, I'm gonna get worse. But I find that actually when I take a break, like for a week, and then when I pick up the instrument or pick up the pen, like I'm refreshed and the stuff is always better by giving myself a little breather.
Like maybe just to like segue from that, so you're curious about the relationship between your music and your graphic arts practice. Like you're in a band, correct?
Yeah, I have a couple different musical projects, solo and in a band. And I've been in bands for far longer than I've been doing comics and whatnot. Uh, but yeah, they've always kind of just been separate areas for me, music and art. And so I've always tried to find ways to put them together, but they've just been separate for the longest time.
Yeah, that's interesting because I like feel like I sense a kind of musicality in your comics or specifically in your writing. I was talking with a friend about your writing, and what we both found so distinctive was the rhythm in your language, your use of the idiom, tautologies, and the apparent kind of delight in alliteration and rhyme. Like, is there a relationship between like rhythm of language and rhythm of thought and how that and music and how that plays into your overall sensibility?
Definitely. Like I just love words and wordplay. So oftentimes with like lyrics also, like I'm not thinking necessarily the meaning behind the word. Sometimes it's like, oh, like this would just be a cool song title. Or I like this the way this looks together and bouncing around. So as like a lyricist, um, first, I guess that's how I'll naturally write like a script for the comic book. And so a lot of the lines in the comic also may have started as lyrics. And I was like, this is too goofy and silly or weird to be in a song. So it'll just find its way in the comic. But I
Into
grew up like,
Dusko,
yeah, exactly. Like,
to
so
elsewhere.
they keep on they overlap and inform each other in certain ways, the two different art forms. Um, and like Dr. Seuss was a huge staple. So I think, and like later on as an adult, like Kurt Vonnegut. So I gravitate towards writers who are pretty playful and like break apart the language anyways. So that's what appeals to me.
Yeah, there's that repetition really kind of dismantles meaning, I feel. Um,
Yeah. And in the end, like the comic, like I want it, while it's like a silent thing and this experience of like just looking at something and reading it, I want it to be as loud and provocative. So having like that bright of colors and having characters be like that loud and outspoken, I felt would make it be, as close to a cartoon without being a cartoon and just remaining a comic. But I just wanted that kind of extreme quality within it.
no, I love that. I know, so like I know earlier I said that I was kind of like hesitant to talk about characters, but I am really curious about what your favorite or who your favorite character in the world is.
Oh man, that's so tough to choose. Like they're all my babies in a way. And a lot of them are based on real people. Like I had so many like bizarre customers or managers or coworkers that I would just hear some lines that were just like, oh, it's too weird not to throw in there. Um, like one of my favorite characters is Conrad. He's one of the regulars, and he's like this kind of vigilante who's going around and just cleaning everything without being paid. He just goes around, has like this superhero OCD agenda to sterilize the world and like just clean it and bring his broom and his cleaning supplies everywhere. And he's based on a real dude. Like I worked at this coffee shop for 3 years, and this one guy was on the same block, and I didn't really know his story, but every morning I'd get to work, he'd be sweeping the sidewalk, and then he'd leave like when the sunrise came up. And I was just like, who is this guy? Like, who's telling him to sweep the floor? And I was like, I loved everything about it. And so then I just went off and it spiraled out into its own fictional story.
Are a lot of the parts in Dusko kind of autobiographical?
Um, it's equal parts autobiographical, where it's pulling from like things that I experienced on the job behind the counter. And then also a lot of it is
Like
like
current events, right?
current events too, and inspired by, you know, bad megalomaniac leaders and corporations, and greed for sure seeps in there and based on reality. And then a lot of it is, you know, I can't say certain things while I'm at work if I'm dealing with a bad customer or a argumentative like manager. So a lot of it is like a release, you know, and getting to be able to say whatever I want in the safe space of a comic rather than you saying it and getting fired. So Vincent kind of is like way more loud and outspoken than I ever was, obviously, on the job. So he's kind of fulfilling a fantasy of like, what if you could just say everything you wanted on the job without any repercussions?
Right, so you never put your foot down when you're on the job?
Yeah, no, definitely. I was a good employee. Maybe I was a good actor, but
You're
I'm not too.
observing, you're collecting material for Dusko.
Exactly. So I'll avoid confrontation, and any negative thing that'll just seep its way into the comic instead.
Oh, interesting. Well, I guess I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about your thoughts about NFTs as a new kind of economic and social model for content production.
Well, for me as an artist, like before NFTs, like I've pretty much existed on like the internet for the most part. Like uh I haven't been playing shows for the longest time. And so music has been solely a digital thing for me. And same with art, like on Instagram and sharing illustrations and whatnot, or having the comic digitally for a while. Um, so NFTs kind of solve the issue for me as far as being able to be shared more, and like the fact that there's all these different marketplaces and websites that are devoted to giving artists platforms, as well as the fact that it built into it is people being able to actually be paid. So you see fans are excited to buy stuff, and people are excited to share their work and see value added to their work. So it's just encouraging as an artist. I'm like very, very new to it. So I'm excited to see how it transforms and how music can relate into it as well. But I think it's like the best platform yet on the internet.
Yeah, it seems like a great place to, I mean, as we've talked before, it seems like a great place for you to like grow the world of Dusko also, and like kind of bring a kind of community of interested viewers along with you.
Absolutely. The whole trend and that I'm like entering into with these avatars of each Dusko character, and seeing how like people will buy a specific avatar that they relate to. I love the whole communal aspect of people like inserting themselves into these fictional worlds. And Dusko, like I've always wanted to just continue to grow and like have everything within that world. So have their own fictional TV that they watch, and people that they watch on TV, or have other businesses that rival Dusko, or all these other characters. And I want it to be sprawling like The Simpsons or some Marvel universe type of thing, where it's just kind of just never ending as far as it. So the
Just like
interaction with people.
just like fractals, just constantly expanding.
Exactly.
I'm like
Yeah. Like,
super excited to see where you take this.
yeah, that
Um,
so this is only encouraging to continue it, and yeah, and maybe it'll inform it as far as like dictate the direction that it may go.
Amazing. Well, I think I kept within the 30-minute mark. It was really great talking to you, Dakota.
Yeah, those are
Really
good
excited for you to
questions.
launch. It's you're launching on Monday, correct?
Monday at 5 p.m.
Right, and that's the mint. All right.
Yeah.
Well, good talking to you.
Yeah, sweet. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.